Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly, and Happy New Year. Happy 2024. So looking forward to an amazing year ahead of us, and I'm delighted to bring a fantastic guest to start the year, a 4-time author, sales coach, sales guru, sales consultant, and now founder of the website What's Really Possible, none other than Jill Konrath. And why did I bring Jill to the podcast? Jill is, she's a trailblazer. She's someone who's not afraid to get in the weeds and really get curious and learn and figure things out, document the process, observe, really tap into her self-awareness, and usually a best-selling book comes out of it. But I think when you look at 2024 and what it's going to take for us to succeed, a lot of it is, our attitude. How do we have that resiliency and reframe our language and look inward, look at ourselves? If we're trying to deliver value to our prospects, what value do we bring? How can we really work on ourselves? How can we be others focused? How can we truly connect with our audience? Ask questions about them, make it about them so that they feel, wow, this is different. This person genuinely cares about me. They want to help me. And all that is by asking great questions, which she shares a funny story of how she practiced asking great questions. And also just, connecting with your audience to have a conversation. And that's the goal, have a conversation. How can I understand what's going on, ask questions, and remove the pressure from both parties of this hard sales tactic. So definitely encourage you to take a listen, apply some of her learnings, listen to what she's focusing on now, what's really possible, include her website link there. And also on jillkonrath.com, Konrath with a K, she's giving away all her resources, all her videos. They're ungated, they're free. And I can tell you they're timeless. I've downloaded tons of them over my career. So yeah, take advantage of her experience, her knowledge, her wisdom. And she's just an amazing woman. And I would highly encourage you to take a listen. I know I always learn from her. She's just a force to be reckoned with. So wish you all a great start to the new year. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. So from someone who I quote says, I hated sales. I thought it was disgusting, horrible profession, who came to be known as the #1 B2B sales expert on LinkedIn, amongst other amazing names of trailblazer guru, I am delighted to welcome Jill Konrath to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
I'm delighted. Thank you for giving us your time, Jill. It's such an honor. And just for some context, I heard you speak in Shebangs in Arizona a few months ago, and your ability to present and storytell and just engage had such a profound impact on me that I wanted to bring you to the podcast and share your wisdom and your expertise with my audience.
Thank you.
So what I really want to dive deep into your brain of the masterpiece of a brain you have is when I think about where we're at now. We've had, kind of coming out of the pandemic in the rear view, but when you look ahead, we have AI. And I think what a lot of people, sales professionals are facing right now is as we turn the calendar into 2024, I would say there's more discouragement and a little bit of fear versus excitement. And so I really wanted to talk about, how can we equip ourselves from the mindset, the reframing, our attitude and our skills to really start within ourselves, do the work, but to make for an enjoyable experience for our audience.
Some people would say you couldn't do that with all the things that you just presented to me in terms of what we're dealing with. But I mean, let me just say from the beginning, we have a challenge. We don't have a problem. And if you define something as a problem and that AI is going to be scary and our jobs are at risk and this and that, it immediately sets off the fear reaction in your brain, and you start being stupider, if I can throw that word in. You see fewer ideas and fewer ways out. You get discouraged, and you're not at your best self. So you have to look at it differently from that onset. And let me just say that having been in the sales world for a number of years, there's a whole lot of things that change all the time. There are ups and downs. In 2008, there was an economic problem, crash, and a lot of people lost their jobs. And before that, there was Y2K, when everybody was scared to death that the computers weren't going to be able to handle the transition to the new century. And there's just always ups and downs. And certain companies have their own ups and downs as they go through different market issues and stuff. But if you let yourself get discouraged, you are less creative than you normally are. You come up with fewer ideas to get yourself out. You sink down, you do less work, and it's a downward spiral. So you really have your choice of how you want to respond. And you can say to yourself, oh my God, I'm at the mercy of all these factors that are happening. Or you can say, what can I do about it? And how can I prepare myself? And then how can I deal with it as it arises?
And so what I heard there was a choice. And I think in times like this, we always have a choice. And
Yeah,
those who really become the victim and those who are the victors. But I think also, Jill, language plays a role, because when you see that, as you mentioned, fear and problem, it immediately triggers I can't. And
that's right.
um, you already position yourself as like this is big, it's one and I haven't. So I think there's an opportunity to reframe there. And how can we turn this into an opportunity, even though
Right,
there might be some areas we have to navigate, but there's still a way out.
right. I always like the word challenge because people rise to a challenge as well. This is a challenge. It's not insurmountable. Somebody's going to be selling something, during these time frames. Not everything is going to crash. Some people in your company are going to do well, some are going to fail. But you can be the one who does well if you see it as a challenge and tackle it as something that is understandable, doable. You can, there's upgrading your knowledge of the marketplace, there's upgrading your own personal skill level, there's looking at things from different angles, there's working with groups and brainstorming together on a regular basis, there's coaching. I mean, there's so many things that can be done. And yes, it is scary when change happens. And yes, you go through this period of angst inside, but it doesn't have to get you down if you call it a challenge. Again, your brain likes a challenge, it responds differently.
That's this rocky rise to the challenge, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Hmm.
you just listed a number of ways for professional development and just coaching and how can you improve, because the constant is change, right? And so it's like,
Yes,
how can we best prepare ourselves for the change? And you
that's right.
listed 5 or 7 ways there. My question is, why do you think people aren't embracing this? And really, a lot of these ways are free too. I mean, podcasting is one of them, reading a book.
Sure.
So why do you think people are maybe not rising to it or taking advantage of it as much as they should?
I think a lot of people are trying to decide if they can make it in sales and if they can't. And they have this preconceived notion that sales is something horrid, like I did. I thought it was disgusting and, last thing in the world I wanted to do was be in sales, but I had an idea for starting a company and put together a business plan and shared it with the VP of marketing from General Mills, which is, a nice little company that most people have heard of. And he said it was great and brilliant. And they looked at me and my two partners and said, now, which one of you three is going to be doing the sales? It was like, well, I thought it was such a good idea. It would just sell itself, right? I mean, that's, if you're starting a company, you see that. But the reality is somebody really does have to sell it, like you said it to me. And so I reluctantly went into the profession. Um, some people go in because it's a starting place and that they can get there, but you can't stop there. You have to embrace it as I have something to learn. It's like you don't go to the Olympics, in a swim, you know, meet in the Olympics and swim the 50-yard butterfly or something, you spend a lot of time practicing for it, thinking about it, and watching films and listen, about how you're doing and looking at your stroke. And the same thing is really true with sales. You can analyze your calls. You can work with somebody else and tag team each other and give each other feedback. I mean, I just as one other person along, and you can really be working together. Um, I mean, I have a lot of ideas because this is always something I always needed to keep things going because I had to keep growing. And I also moved into consulting and working with companies on product launches and things like that. But I think somebody who's new needs a role model. And the role model can't be the billionaire who's already, had an IPO on their company, or the top salesperson in your organization who's got the biggest accounts. If you're starting or you're struggling, you need people who are going through some of the same issues that you are, and maybe just a little ahead of you. And you need to not have the pride to be if you're too proud, you can't ask for help. But for me, I know when I first started in sales, I picked a guy who started a few months earlier than me who had done real well, and I kind of attached myself to him and started like a barnacle, like Lowell, tell me how you're doing. How did you do that? And pretty soon we became peers. But I don't know. I just think you need to realize that sales is a learned skill. There are so many ways that you can get better at it, starting from, targeting the right clients or possible clients to figuring out how you're going to approach them the right way, to listening to your own voicemails to see if you would delete yourself. Don't I've done that, by the way. When I switched markets, I used to call myself up and to just to hear me going, oh God, Jill, you sound awful. I'd hang up with you when by the time you said this. It's pretty dreary. But it's so much you can do, and it's a learning experience. And if you really go at it from that perspective, you don't get down on yourself. You go, who else can I see? Who else can I talk to? Who's ahead of me? Who struggled with this problem before? What advice would they give me?
Mm-hmm. And all great points. And I think to answer those questions or to even be in the position to ask them, there has to be a desire to get better and to want to win and want to, sales is a profession. And I just
Yes.
think when you treat it like that and when you see it like that, not this commodity or this transaction, you really want to get curious with yourself and start really honing your self-awareness and saying and being okay to
Hmm.
watch those cringeworthy first calls and
Oh
listen to
yeah.
your voicemail and send yourself an email saying, well, 400 words is too long.
Oh my God. And you scroll through it. I would never read this far in an email. I'd delete myself after that first paragraph. Or the subject line is sucked so bad that you wouldn't even want to open the email. I mean, there's so much that people can do, and you're right, it is a profession. It's not just something that you do on your way to something else. It's something that you can get really good at. And the reality is, if you get good at sales, you get good at a lot of different things that can help you be successful wherever you go in your career.
Hmm. I think it's in life. It's you're dealing
Oh
with people.
yeah.
You're moving people. Whether you're a parent, a partner, you're trying. There's always the element of influence and persuasion.
Right.
And so a lot of people say, I hate sales. I'm like, well, you just practice it to watch your TV show tonight because you negotiated with your
That's right.
11-year-old and you won. So it really is everywhere.
Hmm.
So you mentioned a few things there about just trying and even you latched on to someone a few steps ahead of you. And I couldn't agree more with community. And I know you've been a real
Yeah.
trailblazer, especially for women and having a community. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, let me just say, yes, I did start a group of women sales professionals who were speakers, authors, trainers, coaches, etc. But I was I, very selfish about it. I needed them. I needed them in order to be better in my profession. And so I pulled a group together, and everybody got better because we were all together. And the first time we got together, I made all these people who saw themselves as competitors share one of their strategies that was helping them grow their business. And people were appalled that we were sharing strategies, but it's a big world out there, and we can help each other, and we can lift not only the profession but women in the profession too.
And you did that, and even in our, I'm so grateful that I am part of the Women's Sales Pro community that you've
Yeah.
created and Lori's taken over. But we did that, and when you could look at it and say, well, there's a lot of competing, businesses here, but nobody saw that we were all openly sharing. And
Yeah.
I think this is what community is, and
Uh-huh.
especially women, when we can lift each other up, we
Yes.
help each other. But it's so nice to see that you actually, needed, like, you carved it out for yourself, but through
Oh,
that.
it's very, very selfish.
Yeah, but think about our
No,
newsletters and our blogs.
I
Usually we're
know.
writing because or even as you're a
Yeah.
four-time author,
Yeah.
some of the reasons we are writing is because we need the help, right? It's getting our thoughts on paper that help us.
Yeah. Well, then, all four of my books that I wrote in sales, every one of them is because I had a sales challenge that needed to be solved. I mean, there was a period of time when I lost both my big customers, and I had been booked out as a consultant. I'd been booked out for 6 months, longer than 6 months. And within a 2 week span, because Wall Street spoke and said, thou shalt deliver better earnings, I lost all my business, 95% of my business. So I had to reinvent myself. And the process of reinventing was very painful. And then I finally was ready to go to market and figure out what I was going to do. And nobody answered the phone. Nobody returned my emails. Nobody called me back. It was like, what in the world just happened? And I thought I'd lost my mojo, and there was no future for me. And I finally said, okay, Jill, because I heard it was a problem from other people too. When I finally realized it wasn't just me being totally stupid, and realized it was one of everybody's problems, I threw myself in, and I said, okay, I got to figure this out. And there were no books out there, so I spent like a year trying to figure. First of all, I had to get my own business back, and I figure out what would work, and then I had to take my own business out of it and say, now, if I were in another business, how could I make this same process work? And so there's a methodology for figuring out what to do and how to go to market. And that book was selling to big companies. It was designed for small to medium-sized businesses who wanted to get into larger corporations because bigger deals. So I wrote that, and then that book came out, and shortly after that, um, one of my best customers, I had done a big project for them, said to me, Jill, give me a call next week, and we will talk about the next step. So I gave him a call the next week. He didn't call me back. I called him back again. I called him back again. I sent him emails, called him back, sent him emails, nothing. I finally wrote him an email and said, Bill, I don't know what I've done, but somehow I must have offended you, because we've always worked together, and please accept my apologies. And I really meant it, because I'd worked with him for a couple of years. He got back to me in 30 minutes and literally said, oh God, Jill, no, you haven't done anything. I am so crazy busy that I just can't get my head above the water. And all of a sudden I realized that we were facing, in the sales profession, a new issue. We had crazy busy customers who had less time for you than they ever had before. And we had to learn how to change what we did. So I had to think about it for myself and figure out what to do. And then I wrote another book, Snap Selling, for how to sell to crazy busy buyers. And then I wrote that book, and salespeople came up to me, and sales leaders, and said, Jill, this is really helpful. I mean, I'm getting in to see people. We're moving the decision along faster. Um, but I'm crazy busy too. What do you have for me? And I said, oh God, I have no idea. I'm swamped. I'm dying. I've got so much to do. And then I realized I did know something that other people didn't know. And what I knew, because I was a consultant who had to do rapid immersions, is I knew how to get up to speed fast in a new sales job. So then I wrote the book Agile Selling, which is all about how to quickly get up to speed, like I said. And it was step by step. Here's what you need to know if you're going to be selling. And it wasn't all about how to be the salesperson. I had 2 books in that. It was, what do you need to know to get up to speed fast? And then I put that book out, and people said, well, that's great, Jill, but I'm still crazy busy. Can you help me with that? And again, I said, well, so am I. Nothing's changed. And then I woke up one day and went, well, this is crazy. I'm crazy busy. I should probably figure this one out.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Are you? Yeah, all 4 books are answers to problems that I saw. They're not Jill just philosophizing about what to do and how to sell well. It's like, these are human problems. I'm facing them, and I kind of know how to sell. I've been doing this for a while, but suddenly the market shifts, and we had crazy busy buyers. Suddenly people had to get up to speed fast, and what does it take? I mean, there's just so much, and the overwhelm thing is still there. So, I mean, I think people have to, you know, face into it. I tried a whole lot of different technologies at that point. I experimented with a lot of stuff. I choose to call things experiments too, because then I never fail. Um, so I experimented with what worked better, what didn't work, and discovered that the thing that worked best for me, and I can't say it would work best for everyone, because like I said, I got productivity improvements in a lot of different approaches that I used. Um, the thing that worked best for me was role playing. I role played that I was a time master. And I had a big sign in my office when I walked in that said, Jill the Time Master. And I'd stand up and I'd put on my Time Master robe and sit down at my computer. Didn't have a robe, but, mentally. And, when I role played somebody who wasn't so crazy busy as me, it was amazing how much I could get done and how fast and the efficiency of it and the quality of the work. So it was a funny experiment, but I mean, I tried everything and it made a difference.
Well, what a great story. And it just shows like you're adaptable, because after every challenge, you documented your process through writing, which is great. I think as you struggled, you found a solution. And I'm sure people listening to this now are thinking, Jill Konrath got ghosted. People didn't get back to Jill Konrath. Maybe I don't feel so bad. But just think about that story that you with your customer, and you sent him a message saying like, you didn't get back to me. I think that's what we're seeing a lot of now is salespeople think their customers are actually thinking about us a lot more than they are.
Yes.
And I think there needs to be a little bit of reality check there, that we're important,
Oh,
but not that important. And I think
no.
that's part of it, is this managing expectations, in that when they're day to day and you look at their schedule, like we play very, very minute part of it. And so I think
Yeah.
when you know that, there's going to be less discouragement. There's going to be less letdowns, because we know where we stand.
Yeah. And to me, that would also imply one other thing. It would imply that I have to figure out how to be more valuable
Yeah, absolutely.
to them. And I'd have to look at what can I bring to the table? How can I give them resources that they would find useful? How can I keep the momentum going? Who else do I need to bring in? How can I help them make the decision easier? There's so many ways you can get better when that's what's going on. But I think so many people are so focused on the numbers these days, and so many companies want you to do X amount of calls or send out, they've got all these things that you're supposed to do and how often you're supposed to do. And the failure rate is so high on all those things. To me, I would say, how could I send out fewer ones that were better and increase my hit rate so that I didn't have to try to get into 2,000 people, but I could focus on maybe 30 companies that I thought might be a good fit from what I was bringing to the market.
And what I would say there is, that's also the sales leadership that needs to say, hey, these
Oh,
KPIs are serving one person and one person only. Your customers don't really care about how many dials. They care
no.
that you understand their business and that you can help them solve a challenge.
Yes, that's all they care about. And they care about being a valuable resource. And, a lot of companies have their scripts for people that they want them to follow. But it's really about how do you learn yourself to be a valuable resource. If your company's not doing it for you, and a lot of companies don't invest a lot in salespeople, but you can still become smart at the things that your customers are interested in and what matters to them. And one of the things that you can do if you're new in a job is you do take over some accounts sometimes, and you can go interview your customers. And the best customers to interview, I found, were the ones who made their decisions within the last year, because they remember the good old days when they had that other service or they were using another technology. They remember it. But if somebody switched to your company 5 years ago, it's the status quo. So to go back and interview them and be willing to say, hey, I'm new, I just took over this territory. I've been in the company here, but I've been working in the medical device area. And now I've switched over here and calling on financial services. Can I learn something from you? And people are open to you learning too when you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that word learn or help is definitely a key word.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of that jobs to be done framework.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Christian Claytonson, who just did that. It was such a valuable tool, and that's what he said, like the shorter term, because they remember that tipping point. When you bring them back to the day, they remember going, there was an emotional trigger, something that
Yep.
happened that pushed them over from that
Yep.
before state to that future state. And I think it's very important to know that for future clients, but even the emotion, like what were they feeling?
Well,
And when you
yes.
can say, I think it was a Tuesday, it was around 4 o'clock, you bring them back to the moment and they're
Mm-hmm.
in it. And I think he suggested 3 months because then they're really in it, and you
Yes.
get that crispiness that you can bring to other prospects. But I think
Yes.
when there's new people, they haven't, when they have their, company stories that they can leverage, but they themselves haven't yielded success yet. So they're just
Yes.
like, I don't want to, this isn't my story. And I'm like, well, when you could bring a customer in and they're telling you from the source, this is what happened. You work for the company, you can own that story now.
That's right. Again. Mm-hmm.
And it's so valuable. You said a valuable resource. We need to be a valuable resource to our prospects, and I definitely think that. And what I see too often now, Jill, is that there's perceived and there's actual value. So we sometimes think, oh, this is valuable, and in their eyes, it might be, well, it was pre-pandemic, but we don't. Our processes have changed, so it's not anymore. But
Yeah.
even a step before that is, what level of importance do you place on the rep seeing themselves as valuable themselves? Like just that, how do they view
Mm.
themselves? Because I think if there's an incongruence or a gap there, they might feel that I myself don't bring value because I'm new, I'm junior, I've
That's
made a lot
right.
of mistakes. And that's going to, even though they're sharing, they're saying all the scripted words, it doesn't translate with the level of emotion and conviction that's going to move their prospect.
Right. And that does happen. But let me just say that rep can learn stuff. And if they don't have it, they're new in a job. I mean, people who conduct surgery on other people, they've been trained well. They go through it, they try it, and they experiment. Like I said, I mean, I use that word a lot. If you're not doing well, you need to figure out what you can do differently. It's a problem solving initiative in terms of where are you running into problems. It's being honest with yourself and looking at the conversation that you had. Was it, where were the gaps in the conversation? What did you miss? What Where could you have said something that would have made a difference? And again, it's really just being honest with yourself. If you're new in sales or new in sales but in a new company, you have to learn, and you have to just admit that you're a learner and you don't know it all, and kind of sop it up. I mean, you can go talk to other people who have been around the company for a long time and get their stories and hear the stories, and but you can interview them too and not just hear them. And you can say, well, tell me more. And what was it that really triggered them to make the change that they did? And as you were working with them, what did you discover that they didn't even know that they had a problem with? I mean, and you can get into the story yourself and learn more about it so that you can talk about the story and how your company has helped other people, and you can know enough to have an interesting conversation. And by the way, you should not only know the story, but you should be knowing the questions you should be asking. So if you have a story that you can tell about how one company succeeded, there should be a whole slew of questions that you can be bringing up as well, in terms of things like, your the clients or prospective clients experience with that kind of issue, how they dealt with it in their company, what did they discover, and what was the part that was hardest for them or that they were dealing with. But every single thing that you bring up could be a lead in for a conversation that could find a way that you can help them.
It's so important. I think that leaning in with your curiosity, but even in that storytelling, there's no selling there. Like
No.
you're solely seeking to understand, and it's just like a puzzle. You're like, how does this fit together?
Yes.
And it's reverse engineering and going, I've got the answer, but now I need to know what questions yielded
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's where that reflection comes in, is like, okay, I asked this question and they held back a bit. okay, that maybe it was too abrupt, or maybe I need to add in your opinion or your experience in front of the what questions,
Yep.
things like that, that you start iterating and going, okay, I'm getting better. I'm not making them feel like they don't want to share. And I think all that is just it's kind of like the role playing. We got to practice. But the first
You have to practice. The words have to come out of your own mouth. You can't experiment in front of your clients. You have to
But
practice.
even Jill, the first part is ego, like admitting I'm gonna suck. Because when I get on a
Hmm.
skateboard for the first time, I'm not Tony Hawk's. I'm not doing tricks. Like when I do
Yep.
anything for, and I think people maybe compare themselves to the senior rep or the 20-year overnight success. And they're like,
Oh
I
yeah.
want to be her. And it's like, go fall on your
Yeah.
face. Go get punched in the face, as Mike Tyson says a few
Yeah.
times. Talk to us a little bit about making it okay to have some failures. Was there any time that you had any failures that you have to think, well, I didn't die from, nobody died from that. So it wasn't really a failure, but like things that you learn from and that didn't make you risk averse, moving forward.
Let me just say that I did feel some spectacular like, with some clients. And I'll just give an example. In with one client, I not a client. I had been cold calling back in the days when you cold called and knocked on doors. Anyway, cold calling copiers, selling copiers, and I ended up talking to an administrative assistant to the president of this small company, and she said, yeah, they were interested in buying a copier, and I was excited, and I was going to be talking with her the next week or so. And over the weekend, I read a book on how to sell, and
So you
and it
you were an
said,
expert. You were an
huh?
expert then.
I was an expert, and it said, don't ever deal with the administrative assistant. Never, never. They don't have the power to make the decisions. And I went, oh, God, I blew this one. So I got back to the office on Monday and I called up the company and and, and I asked to speak to the president of the company, and they put me through. It wasn't a big company. And I set up an appointment with him, a meeting with him. And so I went out to the meeting later that week, and guess who comes down to the front door to the office, that lobby, to bring me in? It was Tinsy. Her name was Tinsy. I'll never forget her. And she came to get me, and she said, Jill, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm here to see Mr. Big. I have a meeting with him. And she said, well, what about? And I said, well, about your copier decision. And she gets right, I'm in the lobby, other people are in the lobby, and she gets right in my face and she starts going, I told you I was making this decision. And suddenly I knew I had goofed really badly. And I mean, and people were watching, and I was just like terrified. And I
Oh.
fainted flat on the floor in the lobby with a
Oh
short skirt
God.
on. Yes. Oh God. And yeah, the next thing I remember is that some people are down with me on the floor, and Tinsy says, are you okay? And I said, yes. And she said, then get out of here and don't ever come back again.
I thought she was gonna pity give you the sale.
Nope. Nope. I was kicked out and told to never come back again. And I was still a trainee with the company. I didn't even have my official territory yet. And I thought, they're going to fire me. They're going to call Xerox and they're going to tell them about this horrible person I am, and they're going to fire me. And they didn't do that. But then I had to say, okay, Jill, you're still alive. What did you learn? What did you learn? And what did I learn? The reality is I went around her back. And if I were her, and somebody had gone around my back, I'd been mad too. So I learned never to go around people's back. If I was going to talk to the president, I was supposed to talk to Tinsy first and say, we really need to bring the president in because it really involves him or her too. So yeah.
Wow, a name like Tinsy, you don't think that she's gonna have that impact. But a few things there is that I like what you said about just role reversing, and there's a integrity and there's an ethical
Yes.
component of it too. And you just think, if someone did that to me, like I always role play, I'm like, if someone did that to me, like I'd be pretty annoyed. And I don't
Yeah.
know if I would get in your face like Tinsy did, but you would know that I was unhappy. And I think the
Yeah.
second part is, even regardless of what you read, and that book told you not to do that, but like you still have to listen to your own moral compass and like what
Hmm.
rings true to you. And I think people,
Right.
they're so reluctant, or they're so reliant on a script and a framework. And I'm like, yeah, but like,
I
who
know.
are you at the core? And like, what do you believe in? Like, what is your purpose? So
Yeah.
take that, but like, uh,
Yeah.
you do you.
Yes. Yes. The script is written oftentimes by people who don't have the nice words that you would use and the way of wrapping it in language that feels like you. It feels like a script. And you're going through the motions of selling. And that's different than actually having a conversation with a human being whose life you can make better by your product or service. And to me, it was interesting because I really remember there was a point in time where I actually had to step back and say, what do I have to do to make this person feel comfortable with me? And how can I make him or her successful? Because if he or she is successful in their job, I will be successful. So the whole focus then was on helping my client be successful, not selling them copy machine, not selling them technology, not selling them services, which I did all in my career, um, but really focusing on their world and the challenges that they were facing that my product, service, or consulting could solve. And so the minute I finally let go that it was about me making the sales, and it was about really just having a conversation with you that was a legitimate conversation that focused on it. And let me just say, I'm not somebody that just thinks that I can do it by chance. I don't trust my in the moment behavior.
I think because you are almost like you have to think it out first. I feel like the
Hmm.
fact that you're a four-time author that would support what you're saying of like, I think it out, I document it, and then I do it. So in the moment, that think on your feet may not apply as strongly.
When I was in high school, I wanted to date, and guys. I'm going to switch subjects, okay? I wanted I wanted cool guys to ask me out, and I read 17 magazine, and they're the expert on dating at that point. And it said that what you needed to do for a guy to like you and want to go out with you, you had to ask him questions. So I tried that, but the minute I got around a guy who asked me out, I was a nervous wreck, and I couldn't think of the questions. So then I wrote the questions down and started writing the questions down. I didn't take them out and ask them in order or anything, but I did have my list of questions. And occasionally, I remember being at McDonald's one time, and I was talking to this guy, and I couldn't think of what else to ask. So I went to the bathroom and I pulled out my list of questions. And then I came back and finished the conversation. Yeah, so like I'm a little anal retentive on some things, but I learn faster that way. I mean, I cut my learning curve by doing things like that. And I'll never forget. Shortly after that, I had a date with a guy, and I had. You'll laugh. This is like sales. I rated my success on if they asked me out for a second time.
That is sales, right? 1 to 2.
It is, isn't it? I sell myself. Yeah, I went out with a guy, and this is the time I really knew that I'd nailed this ability to ask questions. And at the end of the day, I mean, he did all the talking. I asked questions. I didn't even pull them out. I knew the questions by then to ask and how to ask second and third level questions. And at the end of the day, he brings me up to the front door and he says, "Oh my God, this is so fun. We have so much in common." And I'm thinking, he doesn't know a thing about me. He just talked the whole time. And then he asked me out on a second date. Anyway, sales is like that. And it's about getting the second date, not just the first date. And so you really have to take a look at what you have to do and how can you make it better. And by writing my questions on the date and having second, third level questions, I was able to keep the conversation going. When I started in sales and I really wanted to, when I was focusing on getting good, I actually wrote my questions down and had them in sequence. By the way, my jillkonrath.com website, I'm just going to say this right now. I've just put up everything I can give away in the entire world, and and I'm going to be announcing it soon.
I've been there. Those watching, these are some of the free resources. They're ungated.
Yeah, ungated. No, there's, you don't have to give me your name. I'll never bug you. I'm leaving the sales field, and I just want to make all my expertise available for free. Anything I can give away, I can. I did, but and there's a book on questions in there too, and all sorts of things, and you'll see all my anal retentive behavior on on how to be good at sales. No, I document things. I do want to know how to do it because I want to be good. I want to be good faster rather than slower. So I'd like to speed up my learning curve. But it's all there, and I would love people to go and check it out.
We will absolutely. Jill Konrath K, the K
Jill Konrath
.com.
with a K, Konrath. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
definitely. What a story! What a story with the questions. And you know what? I think I might have done something like that too. The writing down of
Did you
questions.
really?
Honestly, I heard that story. You shared it with us in
Yeah.
Arizona, but
Right.
I'm thinking, did I hear it because it was you, or did I did I do that myself?
Well,
I don't know.
it's funny because when I first started selling at Xerox, I went into spin training at that time, and spin training was about how to ask good questions and how to
Yep.
set things up with a situation question, look for the issues and challenges that they might be having, the business impact of all that, and then the value of change. So I was doing that in high school, but I didn't know that there was a methodology. So
But and Neil Rackham did a great job with because
yes,
it's such a timeless
yeah,
framework there. But think about your desire, Jill, just in that dating and you're a teenager. You made it about the other person and you were able to engage in conversation. And I think when your overall objective is just to have a conversation, not to close them,
not
not
to
to sell, but
close.
have a conversation, you take the pressure off both of
Oh
you
my God.
and you actually are in the moment to learn and go, oh my God, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Because there's no pressure. They're like, we got to close
Right.
this. And it's like, I'm just here trying to figure out
If it
who
makes
you are and what
sense,
makes
yeah,
you tick.
yeah, who you are,
Yeah.
if it makes sense to do anything, are you experiencing these challenges? Where are you going afterwards? What's your next steps? I mean, it's a conversation, and if you can think about it from that perspective, and not, you don't have to walk out of there with an order or go to the next step immediately. You have to do certain things, but you have to have the person trust you and feel that you're sincerely interested in who they are.
And I think that's where the struggle is because I have a little framework. It's the OPP and it's the other person's perspective. And I
Hmm.
always say before you get on a call, before
Oh
you
my God, yes.
have a meeting, just step inside their world for a
Yep.
moment because you probably haven't done their role before and just ask
Yeah.
like what 3 to 5 questions will they have, what motivates them, who influences them, how they make a decision, what if this goes through, what do they get at
Yeah.
work? They get a promotion,
Right.
but even a bit like what happens. I remember someone telling me about this deal and they were saying it didn't go through, but he was really digging in his heels. And I said, what's going on in this guy's personal life? And he said his wife's about to have a baby. And I'm like, okay, so this, what you're proposing represents change, represents late hours. This is not a right time for him.
No.
And so I think even looking at what's going on in their
Right.
personal life to go, okay, this is what's stalling it,
Yep.
but just be able to take a step back and look at the whole picture because sometimes we're like, oh, I don't try hard enough, but
Right.
sometimes it's a legitimate, like this time
Yep.
is not good or they're not stable and I'm not even going to touch this right now because I'm going to fail.
Yeah. And that's really true. There are times that are not good, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, I think there's acknowledging the objection, but then there's pushing too hard, and this is where some of the sales training is like really going for the jugular. It's like, you know what? Someone's having surgery in his family. It's actually not a good time, and being
That's right.
okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a good time.
I think the more we can humanize our experiences and just see them as people versus a number in an Excel spreadsheet or in a CRM,
Yeah. That's
it, the difference we're going to make.
yeah. They're just a number for most people. I have to make X number of calls. I have to make, some. It's not a way. It doesn't give you any joy inside yourself when you're just doing it from that perspective either. And I soon discovered that sales could be fun. It was really having conversations with people about how they could do things better.
Hmm. And that's one word that really isn't synonymous with sales. And I always say, like, bring the fun factor.
Oh
And I
yeah,
remember Sherry Leviton in our training, she was like, have some fun. And
yeah.
even the way she presents, she
Oh
brings
my God.
some levity. And it's just like, yeah, I think the bar is low now for any kind of pattern interrupt, like,
Yes.
have some fun,
Yep.
bring some levity, share a story, be self-deprecating, like you fainted, you wrote down questions at McDonald's bathroom. Like that's fun.
Yeah.
That's letting people in. And I think the more we can do that, they start disarming and they
Oh,
start
yeah.
mirroring and they're like, "Oh my God, that reminds me of a time."
Yep.
And then they share and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're on the golf course.
Yeah. Or out to lunch or whatever.
I mean,
Yeah.
relationships
Yeah.
form
Yes.
because you bring your true self and your full self to the table
Right.
versus this person I think I should be because this is the salesperson.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we put on our salesperson hat, we don't always behave the way we normally would because we feel like we've got to do the pushing. We've got to get the deal. We've got to close it, move it along, and all that. But if we realize it's person to person and it's about making a difference, that's what it really boils down to.
Hmm. And so for those people who are hearing that and they're saying, I'm trying to move away from that because my boss has given me these metrics and given me all this stuff, but I really want to create that human to human. What are like, 2 to 3 things they can do to really ensure that when they are having these conversations that connection that there is a connection?
Yeah, what can you do? You can, I don't know. Again, you bring fun and levity into it, I think is really kind of a really good way because they're so used to people that are following the script. I mean, even sometimes changing the script up a little bit to make it fun. Like the scripts are often, I shouldn't say this, they're often written by marketing people who don't have to get on the phone and think that this is the way that you should do things that sell. But if you take a look at some of the really good people, they're not following the script really. They're having a conversation. What are they doing? They're being humans.
Yeah. No, I think there's commitments we still need and there's things that we need to uncover. But the way in which we do that, there should be freedom for us to do that with that
Oh,
is with
I
ourselves.
agree. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the reality is there are things that need to be uncovered to see if it makes sense to move forward or do anything different. But you need to do it as a person, not as a robot who is echoing the company line.
Hmm. Hmm. And it's funny, and I don't know if you get this when I'm a consumer and I'm on, buying a piece of technology or something, and I can see to the T, and they do that like the kind of the fake laugh as well, like they're that like to create levity, and I'm like, are you choking or is this where it says insert laugh here?
Insert laugh here. I like that.
It's very contrived.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be because that nobody feels comfortable with you. You feel their angst
Mhm, you do.
when you're with them. You really do.
You do. It's like watching American Idol when they're singing poorly and you're just like, "Oh, stop. You don't need
Oh
that."
yeah, I know, I know. And people may think that you don't have to do that as you get going, but anytime you're trying something new or going to do something new with it, I mean, I can remember I was going to LinkedIn a few years back with an idea I had for them in terms of what they could be doing in the marketplace, and I mean, I practiced it with a good friend of mine. I said, I want you to sit in this role. Here's the I'm calling on the VP of marketing at LinkedIn, and here's my ideas, and I want to present it to you as if you were listen as if you were him. And she did, and I had to go back and redo some stuff because I just hadn't nailed it the first time. And I'm a good seller, but when you're doing something new, you don't always do it right the first time, and you do need that feedback from people who care about you and want you to be successful. And you have to ask them to be in your shoes.
Yeah, that's so important, Jill. And I think, even if you're not like LinkedIn is, it's a big deal, but I think even when you're going to a smaller client, people think, well, I've read it. And I'm like, until you've said it out loud
Oh,
many
yeah,
times, but
yeah,
even with a partner, so that they say, you know what, Karen, when you said that, like it felt salesy or it did this
yeah, yes.
and you're like, I
Or
didn't
di-
know that. That wasn't my intention. Well, that's what I'm feeling.
yeah, and it's just so important, to get that kind of feedback because it'll increase your success rate and make you far more successful.
So what are your recommendations around companies for implementing some form of role playing for their sales team?
I don't go into the technology world anymore.
Even, even like not even technology, but even just like sitting down with her manager and saying,
Oh,
hey,
okay.
like, hey, like if we have a
Listen
meeting
to,
on
yeah.
Thursday and you play the customer, you play this, but just priming them, getting in their heads
Hmm.
because you know the objections are coming. So, like,
Yeah,
are
they
you
will.
seeing people not doing enough of this? Is it still like people hate it?
People hate role playing. They do. You've probably seen that too. Um, but it's a way to get the bugs out yourself. I mean, if you can look at it, it's a way to get the words out of your mouth in the right way so that they make sense and you're not like being sleazy or anything. It's just, again, it's shortening your learning curve. It's finding a way to do something better as opposed to having to do more and more and more. I mean, to me, getting better is a whole lot easier than doing more. I would much prefer to get better.
Definitely, and I also think, I always think it's an exchange of value for time, and time is the currency.
Yes,
And when you're showing up and you're practicing on them, it's not a good. It shows I don't respect your time,
that's right. And yes, it absolutely does show that.
and chances of getting to number two are probably slim.
Yes.
All about the
You
one
know,
two.
it's all about dates. Are they going to go out on another date with you or not?
Well, listen, Jill, for those people who are listening and they're just taking this all in and they're saying, God, I've got a resilient mindset. Is there any final thoughts you would like to leave us with for just starting 2024 with, with a growth mindset, but an open
Yeah.
mindset that we can be doing to really make sure that we are upholding sales to the level of professionalism that it deserves?
Yeah. Um, I just think that the word experiment has to become part of your vocabulary. That you have to think about everything as an experiment, and you're fine tuning it, and notice what happens. Debrief yourself after every single client interaction or prospective client interaction that you have. Where did you run into trouble? So what can you do differently? And also, I said this before, what did you do well? Where did they respond to? Because you want to be repeating that kind of success over and over. So to me, viewing sales as an experiment, and paying attention to what you're doing and how to constantly improve makes a huge difference. And again, you don't have a problem, you have a challenge.
Hmm. That's great. A reframe of the word. I think that's so important. One thing I used to ask myself in corporate, I asked myself two questions at the end of every sales call, and it was, did I add value, and would they have paid for that call?
Yeah, would they have paid for that call? Absolutely.
And it
Hmm.
hurt sometime because I wrote down, you spoke too much.
Hmm.
But when you have to write, it's like a food journal. You ate
Yeah.
3 chocolate bars. Guess
Oh
what?
no,
You're
God.
not. No, I'm just saying it's like that where you just think,
Yeah,
I'm not going to, I had to write it down. I wasn't proud of it, but I'm not going to
yeah,
do it again. And I think when we can get into that moment of acknowledgement, we
yeah,
know and we see, okay, I didn't get that because of that. But
yeah,
when we leave it up to chance and we're like, I don't know why they didn't call me back. Oh, well, maybe you talked for 95% of it.
yeah. Well, let me just say, at some levels, I consider myself a lazy salesperson, even though I've told you about all this stuff. I I wasn't so lazy yet, but the reality is, I wanted to go after and make the fewest number of calls and have the highest impact. And everything I did allowed me to have the fewest amount of calls and the highest impact from every interaction I had with people.
But I would not say that's lazy because I took the same approach and I studied Lean Six Sigma. And it was,
Yeah,
how can I get the leanest? Like, why are you taking
yeah,
18 steps? I just took four,
yeah.
compress my sales cycle, and close the deal. So I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's lean and smart, not lazy.
Right. Yeah, I think it is late. But I can have fun with it if I call it lazy, though, can't I?
Yeah, but you're the furthest thing from lazy. So, well, listen, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Jill. And we never really talked about where you're at now. Do you want to tell people quickly what's really possible and what that's all about?
What's really possible is my new website, and it's what'sreallypossible.com. But it's about inspiring people to start taking action about some of the challenges that we're facing in this world. And there are many, many ones, and there's great divides in many countries, cities, families. right now, and there's just a lot that needs to be done. So I'm just trying to do my little part and encourage people who are sitting on the sidelines going, oh, ain't it awful? And we need to do something, or they need to do something, or I hate those people, and to try to do something to change the dynamic. I don't know where it'll go. I don't know. I'm stepping into the unknown right now, and I'm trying to figure out my way forward in this new adventure. And by the way, I call it an adventure because it reframes it. It means that it may not turn out as I expected, but it'll be an interesting journey, and it'll be fun to tell that story. And I'll learn as I go. I don't have to know all the answers right now. I'll make adjustments as I come across the way, and I'm going to have fun on the journey
Mm-hmm.
and
Wow.
try to have the biggest impact I can.
That's
So
amazing. And you've set it up in such a great way to protect yourself, but also to stage that it is fun, that it is learning, that you are in uncharted waters, but you're willing to
oh
go
my,
there anyway.
I am in totally uncharted waters. I've never talked about these things before. Ask me to talk about sales, I can talk about that for quite a while, but this is uncharted waters, and it's scary to me. I mean, it really is, and I'm doing it anyhow, and I'm doing it because I need to do something to make a difference. And I'm pretty good at writing things and turning them into, things. I'm pretty good at it, and that's what I do best, as opposed to organizing and running groups and stuff. That's not my thing.
Mm-hmm. You're a
So,
doer. Is there a book going to be coming out of this?
oh, probably, but I have to learn something first, don't I? I mean,
You-
that's my modus operandi. I got to dig in and learn some stuff, and ultimately a book starts popping up. It's never been the ultimate goal. It's always been the outcome
yeah,
of
yeah.
a process. So,
But good for you for going into the kind of the scrappy, and that's where you go and you figure it out because you're curious.
yeah,
But it's beautiful that you're helping people away, you're creating awareness, and you're also inviting others to go into areas that you're not
yeah,
the discomfort. Because I always say, like,
yes,
on the other side is growth and change, and that's what's going to
yes,
come out not only for you, but those who you're going to touch as a
that's right.
result of
And
this.
and that's kind of my goal. That's my way of making a difference in this world at this point in my life and
That's
career.
a big difference. So
Yeah,
congratulations, and
thank you.
we'll include all your links in the show notes. And so thank you again
Okay.
for all you do for women, for women sales pro, for sales professionals. You've been such a force for all of us. So I want to thank you again for sharing your expertise and your wisdom and your humor.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill. Thanks everybody for
Thanks,
tuning
Karen.
in, and we'll see you next time.